Jules Verne once imagined a world without the humanities, and it's starting to look like the world we live in now. I had a short Substack post about this on my Substack, which you can find a link to below, but I thought I'd give a little bit more in this video. Jules Verne, the great 19th century French novelist. He has a lost novel. It's called Paris in the 20th Century, and it imagines a world driven entirely by technological progress and the relentless pursuit of profit. Now, Verne's was writing, again, in the mid-19th century, and he's picturing what Paris would look like about 100 years from then. So he's projecting Paris, forecasting Paris in the 1960s. But what he says is actually, I think, more descriptive of what I think we're headed to as a society. You may know Jules Verne from his 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea or Around the World in 80 Days, two great novels, but before he had even published those classics, he began work on this novel that would remain unpublished until 1994. So he was writing in 1863, and Verne was way ahead of his time here, because Paris in the 20th century imagines cities with glass skyscrapers, streets that are illuminated by electricity. You've got high-speed trains, unmanned warfare, internal combustion engines, and things that look like gas stations, and also networks that resemble telecommunication systems that we actually have today. But most presciently, Verne's imagined a world in which the humanities, the study of art, history, literature, and languages, were completely underground. The social fabric of this future Paris is completely impoverished of the humanities. Literature completely dismissed as useless by a society that completely just prizes technical efficiency and financial gain. And the bastion of learning in this dystopia of Paris in 1960 is called the Academic Union. And the Academic Union is a satirical distortion of what the University of Letters and Sciences used to be. So this is a parody of our own quickly fading university model, which imparts knowledge instead of by lectures and by discussion and by reading. He describes it. He doesn't actually tell us how this is, but the students learn through mechanical means. Just listen to how he describes the Academic Union here. This comes from page 33 of the English translation that I have below in the description. It must be confessed that the study of belles lettres and the ancient languages, including French, was at this time virtually obsolete. Latin and Greek were not only dead languages, but buried as well. For form's sake, some classics in literature were still taught, though these were sparsely attended and inappreciable. Indeed, anything but appreciated. Dictionaries, manuals, grammars, study guides, and topic notes, classical authors, and the entire book trade in De Viris, Quintus Curtius, Sallust, and Livy peacefully crumbled to dust on the shelves of the old Hatchet publishing house. But introductions to mathematics, textbooks on civil engineering, mechanics, physics, chemistry, astronomy, courses in commerce, finance, industrial arts, whatever concerned the market tendencies of the day, sold by the millions of copies. In short, shares in the Union, which had multiplied tenfold in 22 years, were now worth 10,000 francs apiece. In short, Verne forecasts our world today and where we're headed. He predicted the dominance of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, the rampant consumerism, the collapse of community, and also the neglect of the classical literature, and suggestively he also forecasts the rise of artificial intelligence as a substitute for learning. And what's amazing is reading this book now, I read it about 10 years ago as a master's student, and reading it now, it just hits completely differently. Let me just read this other passage from chapter 7, where the protagonist, Michel, his friend, introduces Michel as a poet. Now, Michel is a poet. He won a prize for his Latin verses, and so he's known as a poet. But this is not a poet's world. Let me just read you how this interaction goes. So Michel's friend introduces him at a dinner as One of those poor devils society refuses to employ according to their talents. One of those drones whose useless mouths society padlocks in order not to have to feed. And he says, a poet, my friend. I wonder what in the world he can be doing here in Paris, where a man's first duty is to make money. This dear child, Quincinus replied, he hopes, he works, he loves good books, and when Hugo, Musset, and Lamartine are no longer read, he hopes someone will still read him. But what have you done, wretch that you are? Have you invented a utilitarian poetry? A literature to replace compressed air or power breaks? No? Well then, gnaw your own vitals, my son. If you don't have something sensational to tell, who will listen to you? Art is no longer possible unless it produces a tour de force. And then he recommends that he write on some kind of other topic other than what he's writing on. He says, which means that you deal with poetical subjects, and nowadays that's a poetical fault. You sing of mountains and valleys, fields and clouds, love and the stars, all those worn-out things that no one wants anymore. And Michel says, then what should I sing? Your verses must celebrate the wonders of industry. Of course, he completely rejects this suggestion. Spoiler alert here. If you actually want to read the book and not know how it ends, you should skip ahead a few minutes. But the book follows Michel, who's this protagonist who excels in Latin and in poetry. His awards are mocked by those in a culture that no longer esteems literature or learning. And he experiences the tragedy of an individual lost in a society that is unwilling to appreciate beauty or moral reflection. And because the world Michel inhabits prizes only engineering, banking, commerce, and technological progress, he becomes incomprehensible to those around him, his friends, his love interest, all of whom are participants in the utilitarian machine. And the final image is of him freezing to death beneath the lifeless edifices of a civilization that's completely turned its back on poetry. It's no time for poetry. It's no time for the humanities. It's no time for beauty. All they have time for is money. Now, our own moment slouches toward this end, and if the fate of Michel is not yet ours, it may be the fate of our children and grandchildren. Right now, the humanities are embattled on all sides. University administrations continue to downsize humanities departments and gut funding. You can see my recent video on why the universities are killing the humanities for more on that. But the primary threat against the humanities is not the smartphone. It's not exactly money. It's not short-form content. These are all mere symptoms of a deeper problem. The real threat is a rising technocratic culture of death. That is, a culture that no longer lives according to beauty, that lives as cogs in economic machinery, and reckons lives as mere data points and systems of surveillance and profit. I truly believe that the humanities right now are the last bulwark standing between us and that culture. What else do we have at this point? Is there anything else out there? Religion, yes. Not a viable option for many as they see it. What we have left is basically the humanities and humanism. Our society is largely without an exercised spiritual life, and it possesses a very limited and depreciating moral vocabulary. And we're going to have to look to, I think, religious language for ways of describing motions of the inner life, because there is, outside of it, there's nothing but mechanical metaphors. There is no vitality. There's no vocabulary outside of that. So we're going to have to figure out how to negotiate that. A lot of secular humanism that's come up to the past century or so has done a lot of that already. A lot of that work was performed in the 19th century. But in a society motivated by power, money, accelerated convenience, the humanities truly are the last common ground that provides spiritual exercise and a moral vocabulary. There really is nothing else at this point in terms of common ground. And I'm not sure how long the humanities can hold out against the cults of Mammon and of Nimrod, of the Babel builders, but I do know that without the humanities, society risks complete spiritual erosion. Humanists within and outside the academy must present a united front in these coming years. Right now, any kind of humanism can believe in the power of words and ideas. Any humanist can agree that great literature, for example, can change us. I'm not sure that's something everyone in the academy believes right now, even in the study of English literature or of world literature, any kind of literature. But it's true. Literature provides a template for life and order for the human experience. It rouses our conscience and it dilates our moral capacity. It furnishes us a vocabulary for the motions of the inner life. It sharpens our attention to the world. It wakes things up that are in us. It wakes up our devotion, and it often requires the concessions of moral imperatives, those imaginative laws that hold together the moral worlds of poems and novels. And it expands our capacity to communicate, to problem solve within a democratic society. It also helps us celebrate and to lament civically. And more importantly, literature, especially poetry, facilitates spiritual growth and helps cultivate the faculty of listening that's so needed right now. And much of what I said for literature can be said for the other humanities. The studies of history, of art, of culture, of philosophy. The collective power of the humanities can reawaken a sense of wonder, a real shared dignity, and a responsibility for each other's lives, for promoting this kind of growth. And these qualities, I think, counterbalance the cold mechanisms of a technocracy and a consumerist society that we are pretty much enmeshed in at this point. The studies of literature, history, philosophy, the arts, whether inside or outside the academy, preserve the wisdom of the past, and all those who participate in that reading, in that study, are a part of that preservation. They carry forward knowledge that's not reducible to utility or measurable by metrics. And the humanities cultivate the imagination and revive creative stagnation. They are not luxuries for the elite or entertainments for the bourgeois. They are, at present, the only guardians of morality and memory at this point. It's the only common guardian of that, I'll say. The humanities ought to be a bridge between the academy and the public. They are, or rather should be, a bridge between the polarizing political left and right. How can we make those bridges? We make them by reading, by talking about what we read, by gifting books. We do it by eschewing pretension and snobbery, by starting those little libraries you sometimes see on the side of the road, by organizing book clubs, study groups, and by promoting and modeling civic dialogue, by asking questions and listening. Jules Verne foresaw the dangers of a civilization that measures value solely in economic terms and forgets its own humanity. And right now, our contemporary moment is making his fears a reality. If the revival of the humanities does not come, if we do not now strengthen what remains, we're soon going to find ourselves in the world that Verne imagined.